One of them's the one we use, one of them's not, but they're both ours, and you can tell a difference, but it's just I've accidentally posted my badge videos to the wrong one before, and me and Emily have been like, what?
Oh,
Oh, that was me.
that's
All
funny.
right.
Yeah, I didn't know there was a second like random one.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
That's weird. All right, we got like a minute maybe.
Does my hair look okay?
Oh yeah, you look beautiful. Like a like a queen.
Oh my goodness. I really wish. Oh well.
All right, you ready?
Sure.
All right.
Why not?
All right. Hello, everyone. So excited for everyone to kind of filter in and get back together after the first of the year. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar, Fostering Inquiry and Collaboration with the amazing Lisa Kuhn Oldages. Did I say it right?
Close enough. Oldigus, Oldigus, it's all
Okay.
German. So, right? It's all German to
I
me.
know, I know. There you go. And just for the record, people mispronounce my last name all the time. So I'm getting one in
Yes.
for my
Right? There we
ancestors.
go.
So, as everybody filters in and gets settled, please use the chat to tell us who you are, where you're from, what you do, and drop your X handle if you like, so we can kind of keep that community building going. It's really awesome to be able to follow each other and see one another on social media so we can trade ideas, build that community. So, drop it below. And feel free to use that chat area during the webinar itself if you have questions or comments or something that you'd like to share with another person. Additionally, if you look at the screen, you'll see that we have a Q&A feature, and you can also use that to pose questions during the webinar. And I'll be monitoring that while Lisa gives us the good stuff. And at the end, we'll come back together and go over anything that needs to be hashed out. So if you don't know or you don't see any slides or your Zoom window disappears, just a couple of reminders. Check behind any open windows to see if there's another Zoom window hiding back there. Sometimes they like to go behind the other things that are open. And if all else fails, go ahead and X out of the Zoom itself and then come back in with that same link that you used to join the first time. Just some quick troubleshooting, break fix things to help you smooth into our new session today. And remember, an on-demand version of this webinar will be available at the same link that you used to join today. So that'll happen approximately 30 minutes after the conclusion of today's session. And I'm pretty sure that covers just about everything. If you want to check out and register for any of the upcoming webinars or check out some of the ones previously, go ahead to forward-edge.net/webinars, and you'll be able to see the roster of ones that we've covered this year, any upcoming, and then you'll know where to go when we come back around next year. And of course, feel free to share what you've learned on X or on any social media. And again, just in the chat because there's lots of good stuff going around, and sometimes it's good to share the wealth. Now, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Tori Millette, and as I said, this is my wonderful colleague Lisa. We complement each other's energy wonderfully. Pause for laughter. And I'm an instructional design coach here at Forward Edge. So, what that means is we at Forward Edge are interested in all things educational technology. And a couple of years ago, when we think about what Forward Edge is and what educational technology is, we do things from running the cables to hang the monitors to having everything that a school or facility might need for educational technology to having people on site to be able to help with anything that might need to be hooked up, functioning. And then we have our CNI department. So that's where a couple of years ago we came together and said, now that we have technology in the hands of students and teachers, how can we really use that effectively? And that's where people like Lisa and I come in. So here in CNI, we're all former teachers that come from a broad background with lots of different experiences. And what we offer is vision and planning services for professional development, on-site integration, and we just serve as coaches for schools for whatever the staff, students, and the district itself might need, which is where I am today. So now that we've gone a little bit over what Forward Edge is and who we are as a company, Lisa, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Tori. So, as Tori said, I am Lisa Kuhn Oldigus. It's funny that one of the things we're going to be talking about today is along the lines of project-based learning, because I too am in a school district coaching, and I got asked just about 30 minutes to the second, 30 minutes ago, to help a teacher work with a teacher on some project-based learning activities. So this is going to be a lot of fun for me to go through this as kind of a warm-up to working with that teacher. So one of the things we like to do in our webinars is to focus on the ISTE standards. We find that focusing on the ISTE standards helps us focus on strategies and outcomes more so than on a particular type of tech tool. So today's webinar is going to help you become a better collaborator, where you can dedicate time to collaborate with both colleagues and students to improve your practice, and a designer, because you want to learn how to design authentic learner-driven activities and environments that recognize and accommodate learner variability. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about PBL. Now, before you go running away, because PBL is a scary acronym, what's in a name, right? That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. So we're going to take a look at some other ways of thinking of PBL so it's not so big and scary. We're also going to take a look at how to find those opportunities and what strategies we can use to make a solid and successful PBL or project-based anything happen. And finally, we're going to take a look at how to measure and assess progress and include reflection in that, because that's a very big piece of successful learning and successful student outcomes. So to that end, let's start with PBL. What are the principles and benefits? If we go to pblworks.org, they define it as distinguishing between a dessert project, which is a short, intellectually light project served up after the teacher covers the content of a unit in the usual way. And the project instead, in project-based learning, is the vehicle for teaching. So it's not just students sit and get and then produce a project. It's an entire process. All right. In contrast to those dessert projects, PBL requires critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, and various forms of communication. You're answering a driving question and creating high quality work, using higher order thinking skills, and working as a team, which does not always happen in the traditional stereotypical project. One of the descriptions I really appreciate is from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, where they talk about real-world problems being used as a vehicle to promote student learning. Again, we see critical thinking skills, problem-solving abilities, and communication skills, but even most importantly, providing opportunities to cultivate lifelong learning. That is something we often forget about when we're talking about education in general, right? Because most students just, what can I do right now to get that A and be done with it? No. We got to refresh that thought. Practera.com also focuses on some PBL items, real world meaningful projects. It's inquiry based and student centered. And then they also bring up the 4 C's, the critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, and communication. Finally, we have Maastricht University in the Netherlands, and I apologize if I pronounced that incorrectly. They focus on the PBL using everyday problems being contextual, being constructive, so the students learn how to construct their knowledge, and the teacher's a tour guide, right? Collaborative, so students are collaborating with one another, students and teachers are collaborating with one another, and to some extent, it's self-directed. So we've got self-directed learning skills, planning, reflection, evaluation of understanding, etc. What I would like us to focus on is not that acronym of PBL, but rather let's take a look at what do all of those descriptions have in common. We saw critical thinking, communication, problem solving, collaboration, and all within a specific or real world context. You can call it whatever you want. It's all the same. So here I decided to use AI to help me come up with some other words that acronym PBL could stand for. So if we take a look just real quickly, we've got pioneer bold learning, persistently break limits, powerful brainwave launch, promote brightened learning, ponder, believe, leap, powerful breakthrough lessons, promote bold learning, ponder, breakthrough, learn, and my favorite, proactively building lifelong learners. If we can get our students on that track, there's no stopping any of us. So now that we have an idea about this project-based learning and how we can frame it so it's not so scary, let's look at how we can find the opportunities to create it and strategies to make it successful. So first are the opportunities. Again, we want to go back to those real world connections. And so I pull another description from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. PBL can be incorporated into any learning situation. In the strictest definition of PBL, the approach is used over the entire semester as the primary method of teaching. However, and this is where I want to pull you back in if you're trying to escape, broader definitions and uses range from including PBL in lab and design classes, using it simply to start a single discussion. It can also be used to create assessment items. The main thread, again, is using the real world problem. So here are just a few examples, PK through 5. A lot of examples that you see out there are going to be middle school and high school, because that's where we really think of students as being deep thinkers and being able to connect with the 4 C's. Everybody can at every level. How do we do that? So PBL Works actually has some examples of lessons that you might do as PBL. One of them is this kindergarten math project, where they make connections between abstract numbers and real world items by creating a floral shop. So they're going to hand make paper flowers. So you've got some art going in there. They're going to create bouquets. They're going to describe and classify and sort and add and count and compare and inventory. So while it may not be real world to think that a kindergarten really is going to own a flower shop, what better way to get their brain going than to give them the opportunity to own a flower shop? How cool is that? In math, I actually had the opportunity a couple years ago to visit a local teacher who taught 5th grade, or 4th grade in this case. She did construction projects for practicing fractions. So instead of just a traditional, paper test, she bought hard hats, plastic hard hats that she brought into the classroom, and she saves them every year. Everyone gets a hard hat. And then each station had some problems that the students had to work out in order to build the house, the shed, the whatever it was she had picked for that term to do. And so it may put the fractions in a real world situation rather than just having these random fractions all over the page. A 4th grade recycling program. Again, this is one I was fortunate to be a part of. One of the science teachers in 4th grade had some students who wanted to do a recycling project. So they turned it into a project-based learning lesson. And they investigated, why do we recycle? What can we recycle? How are we going to promote and launch a recycling program in our building? And this took several weeks. They worked both in groups and as individuals. They did research. They created promo videos in Flip. They posted the QR codes around the building. And it became a very hands-on, real-world activity for them. And they really got a successful recycling program going. Another thing I've seen done with PK5 are reading buddies. So you can pair an upper elementary student with a primary or early childhood center student. Older students can record holiday readings, meet with their buddies to practice reading, etc. So it's not a big, blown out, multi-tiered project per se that lasts a semester long. This is an example of one of those smaller pieces to create a discussion, to get a question or a thought going. How can we encourage our kindergarten, primary, elementary, early elementary students to get interested in reading? Let's have one of the older kids read to them. And in this case, what the teachers did is the fourth grade students would record their readings of certain books on Flip. And so on the months when they did not get to meet with their buddy face to face, they still shared a video with them. So again, some real world practice and happenings. If we go to middle school and high school examples, oh my goodness, the world is your oyster here. I was fortunate enough, for 20 years, I was a French teacher before becoming a coach. And I was fortunate to have a class that we were able to do pretty much anything we wanted, which is such a luxury. And so my French 4 students, instead of working our way through a book, we would pick a theme each quarter. And so one year, my students wanted to do a film study. How can we understand cultural differences and similarities through film? And with my situation, we decided that the students wanted to watch 3 different versions of Beauty, or compare 3 different versions of Beauty and the Beast. We watched the original one from, oh my goodness, the 1920s or 30s. We also watched the most recent release from France. And then all of the students had already seen Disney's Beauty and the Beast animation version. And so they divided up into either individuals or pairs. We didn't do any more than pairs on this one. One person or group took music, another took costuming, another took scenes and sets, another took characters, and so on. And they compared those 3 versions and how those represented the culture of whichever country had created it. So 2 of them were French-based, one from the early 1900s, the other from the early 2000s, and the other one was American-based. Social studies. 2024 is going to be a big year for elections, people. So come on, let's get that social studies going. Why don't we hold a full-scale election experience for our students, especially at the high school level? Hold a voter registration. Have some of your students be poll workers. They can campaign for issues. They can include 1 or 2 school-based issues. Talk to your admin. Hey, get some students. What would you like to see something to vote on? And then reproduce the sample ballots for the area. I'm really fortunate that I get to work at a career tech school, 2 of them actually. And some of us are throwing this idea around as an option for next year. So in our case, our voter registration and our ballots could be based on our students' home schools that they feed into. If you teach or feed from, if you teach at a private school, a Catholic school, for example, you have lots of feeder schools coming to you. Your electoral college could be based on the number of people registered for each of those home schools. So kind of cool. If you don't have feeder schools, you could base it on homerooms or hallways or by content areas, different things like that. Real world, oh my goodness. And then we've got an ELA, independent reading projects. I could go on for days with a list of real world examples, but 2 that I really like are the journal. Write some journal entries from the character's perspective. It really gets students thinking about what someone of that time or that place or that situation would be thinking. And then what about your students that like music? Why don't you have them select songs to represent scenes from the novel that they're reading? They can explain how the song aligns with the scene. And they could even go so far as not to just explain how it aligns, but if it were a movie or the music were playing in the background, What would be happening at that time? How would it all tie together? And then again, PBL Works has ideas for high school and middle school. I love that's what in my water? And what is it, right? They've got different tests that you can do on the water and chemical things. So you can get all different kinds of pieces put in. And then math game time. What kind of math is used in designing games, video games, or board games? You can really get heavy into geometry with that, as well as transformations and changes when you get on the video side. So, what are some strategies and suggestions to make this successful? Because even looking at these examples, some of them are pretty big, some of them are smaller, but let's see. You'll notice I've got an image of just a kerfluffle of Legos. And I'm not going to be able to quote exactly. Scott, I apologize ahead of time if I'm just exploding this into a million pieces. But Scott Nunez was on one of our podcast episodes for PBL and the Coach. It's season 3, episode 8. And he described PBL as kind of like looking at Legos. It's, oh my gosh, what the heck are we going to do with this? It's so big and overwhelming. Why don't we just break it down into small pieces? So you can see that at least nowadays, Legos come in packs. So you do this first, or you do this second, or you do this third. This is what it looks like coming out of the box, but you can put them in order. So you do the first thing first and the second thing second and have it all organized, whichever's your jam. So the first thing we want to do when we're trying to embark upon this idea of PBL or real world connections is start small. Take something you're already teaching and make a real world connection. So this might be something like writing journals or video journals. With our littles, they're not writing yet. Try something like a flip journal. It's very easy for them to go in and hit record and record their video commentary. You could also have them do things from the point of view of a character that they've read about, or maybe a character that you read in circle time. One that my French students loved was social media posts. What would Napoleon have posted about his exile? What would Tom Sawyer have posted about his adventures? Spotify playlists. Again, we're going back to that playlist in relationship to whatever it is that we're reading or talking about, discussing. Tour guides. Again, this is something that the littles can do really easily. How would you welcome someone to your community, whether it be your school, your neighborhood, and have them prepare a little something? And if we want to get even a little more basic, I love what a former colleague of mine did. She was a Latin teacher, and Roman numerals was a big piece of her curriculum. She had the students finding Roman numerals in their daily lives. So here in our area, in the Cincinnati area, we have a TV station, Channel 19, and their call letters are WXIX. Obviously, the Super Bowl every year uses Roman numerals. So again, this idea of PBL doesn't have to be a full-blown project that lasts a semester. Start small. Make those real-world connections and build one thing upon the other. Secondly, once you've decided that you want to go a little deeper, make a plan. So what is the problem or question? Or what is the objective or the final product that you want? What skills and knowledge do students need? Because sometimes you're still going to have to give and teach knowledge, content. What are the steps to get to our end goal? Are we going to do groups? How are we going to do those groups? What are the steps of the process along the way? What questions are we going to ask along the way to prompt students? How are we going to collaborate? And then how are you going to assess student progress and learning? Now, I may have started losing a few of you because you're like, man, Lisa, this is all the big, deep stuff again. Let's keep it simple. Well, how about this? Collaborate with a colleague. This is one of the best things you can do for yourself as a teacher, is to work with a colleague on creating these projects. I was very fortunate in my last teaching position to work with another French teacher. We taught completely different levels. I had level 1. He had 2 and 3. I had 4. He had honors 4. I had AP. But we collaborated on projects. Hey, what do you think would be good for French 2 if we're doing a clothing unit? What do they need to know? How does this infographic look? How does this sound for this project? We did it all together. And we would pick and help and choose and pull and recycle things year after year. And then the third thing that I find very important is be explicit and clear when doing this. Many of your students will never have done anything like this. They might not have worked in groups. They might not have collaborated. They might not have done a long-term project. Or you may have students at different places in their experiences. Some that have done it all and were taught really well, some who have never done it at all, and a whole lot of in between. So be sure to explain and model your expectations, the parameters, and deadlines. You might set up little checkpoints along the way. Guide your students through the process. Don't assume that they can figure it out by themselves. Yes, there are pieces of this you want them to problem solve and work through. Make sure they understand the expectations, and that will help them get through from point A to point B and so on. And yeah, do remind them along the way. We're in a time right now in history, in society, where students are really about the immediate, right now, what can I get out of it? And it may take a few times, and it might be a little painful to go through this process with them the first 1 or 2 times. But once they get it, it's going to be so worth it. So, how are we going to measure and assess progress and include reflection in this process? So one of the big things you can do is create ownership and buy-in. I love including students in the entire planning process when possible. Obviously, you want to go into it with an idea of what you want to do. But pull those students in. I'm going to use an example from a French animals lesson that I did with my French 4 students. They decided they wanted to learn more about animals, because that's not a big unit in French 1 and 2 and 3, because you're learning about school and life and social constructs. They wanted to learn more about animals. So we together looked at what are the components that we needed in the animal lesson. So we needed vocab and grammar. We needed information about habitats. We needed information about climates and foods and adjectives and activities and so on. What did we want the culminating activity to be? And then what are the components that will be assessed and create the rubric? So the students helped come up with the list of content. They came up with the culminating activity, which in our case, we were fortunate. We had school. Our school was located just a few minutes, about 10 or 15 minutes from the local zoo. So they said, can we actually go to the zoo as part of our project? Let me check. Admin said yes. So part of their project was creating a brochure about their animal in French. They helped come up with the components of that brochure that needed to be included. And then another part was for the speaking piece, we actually went to the zoo and they gave us a tour of their animal at the zoo. And so we were all the audience and we could ask questions. And so they helped create the rubric for both of those. What content needed to be included? We did ranges of proficiency in both the physical product and the speaking. It wasn't a grammar check of every little piece. So when you do this, let me just tell you from experience, the grading at the end is as easy as I've ever had. And the project level was higher than anything I could have ever imagined, because they helped create it and they had the buy-in. So this is a huge one. Secondly, think about the rubrics. A lot of teachers try to create rubrics after the project or the activity is already started. You need to make sure that you have that rubric created before you even start the project. That way, everybody knows where they're headed and what the expectations are. And here's just a little bit of text giving you examples of some information from that animals project. And finally, encourage students to fail and to share that experience. So, in the animals lessons, as we were going along, especially as they got to researching their specific animal, some of them found it easier or more difficult to find certain information or to craft the item that they were trying to craft. So, we would take regular progress checks. What's going well? Where are you struggling? We helped each other. Even though we might have each had our own animal, we still had collaboration time to help build each other and the project. Why didn't X work the way I wanted or expected? And then even after we visited the zoo and did the presentations, we talked about what went well, what didn't there as well, so that they could get better at the next level of what we would be doing, even if it was not an animals lesson. How was I in my presentation? Was I speaking clearly? Was I able to respond to questions or say, you know what, I don't have that answer, but I'll look it up and let you know on Monday when we get back to class. So we've come to wrap up time. So let's cover just 3 main points. The most important thing to remember is this. Get the critical thinking, the communication, the problem solving, collaboration in a real world context. That is going to do you more good in this than anything else can. Second thing to remember, keep it authentic to where the students are. What are some little or big things that you can pick out from your world, from their world, and how can we collaborate and work together for a common good and a common goal? And the third thing is keep track, measure, and assess that progress. Have those reflective check-ins along the way. Don't wait until the end. Do it along the way, because then the students can grow and succeed better than they could have imagined and better than you could have ever imagined. Thank you. Tori, it is your turn.
I'm always astonished by how quickly that time goes.
Right?
Did you feel like you were really trying to beat the clock?
No, I was keeping an eye on it, but I felt pretty good. Yeah, it
Well,
was,
you did
but
awesome.
thank you. But yeah, it was, I just kept going.
Yeah. It's one of those big overarching ideas that you have to pack into 25 minutes at best, and you did a
Yes.
pretty darn good job, if I do say so myself.
Well, thank you. I will say that this topic is one that's dear to my heart because having been
Yeah.
a teacher, authenticity had to be a part of it or we lost them, right?
Yeah, I was thinking, it made me think back to my teaching days when, and I thought during, like, while you were talking, I was like, I don't have any research to support this. And then I was like, yeah, I do. I did my
Mhm.
master's research on authenticity and kids having choice and doing long-term projects and how they would be more
Yes.
engaged. And the evidence says, yes, you're absolutely right. And when we give them those longer term things where they're working towards a goal, the payoff is so worth it. It's
It,
so much more meaningful to them.
mhm. Yep. So
And
whatever you call it, PBL, authenticity, it's all for the same goal.
birds of a feather, you know.
Yes. Yep.
So I'm going to go, because we're hot on time right now, but I'm going to go over some Forward Edge services. And while I'm doing that, if you had an aha moment, something pop in your mind, or just the coolest thing you heard Lisa say today, feel free to drop that in the chat and I'll tell her about it later so we can giggle together and feel amazing about our successes. So if you're
Love it.
someone that's not a plug, not at all. So if you're someone that's interested in getting your Google Level 1 educator, your Level 2, or your certified trainer, we at Forward Edge offer a comprehensive training experience that can be in person or virtual, led by Google certified trainers. So if that's something you're looking to renew or just go ahead and obtain, we can help you with that. Additionally, if you have some classroom needs that you need to meet, but you're not so sure you have a lot of time to invest, you should really check out our amazing Badges program. Through Badges, you can learn about various topics on your own time, at your own pace, and these are tools, skills, strategies that you can turn around and use in your classroom immediately, and it will impact learning just as immediately as you took and did that little course. We have some amazing people working with Badges, creating Badges, keeping up with with the new tools and ideas and strategies that are coming out, literally every day. And, if you hop on there and listen to a video, you might hear some familiar voices, right, Lisa? Wink, wink.
Don't know who.
I have no idea. You're going to be like, hey, I've heard that voice before. It might be one of us. Who knows?
Yeah, but it won't be our
So
laughs. I don't think we usually laugh in the Edu videos.
I edited out.
Yeah.
So so if you're someone who you really just want to keep on top of those new tools and those new strategies, we've got people working really hard to put that information into your hands so that you can turn around and put it directly back into your classroom and see that payoff. So pay attention and look at badges. If that's something you're interested in, it's our Anytime, Anywhere PD, and we're always cranking out new ideas.
Yes.
And these days, you can never be too careful. I know in the world of social media and even emails, cybersecurity is a very big deal. It's important to keep your cyberspace safe for yourself, your family, and especially in education for our students. So if you need some tips, some teacher training videos, we can help you with that at Forward Edge with all of these different cybersecurity resources. And then if you're just looking for an amazing coaching community, sometimes when we're out in our sites, we can feel a little spread apart and it gets lonely sometimes. And then sometimes you're so busy you don't even think about it, but you're like, man, I'd really like to hear from another coach and see what they're up to, share some thoughts and just really engage with that community that's so important. Like we were when we were teaching, community is important. Same goes in the coaching world. So we have a bunch of different resources, everything from the Restart Recharge podcast, which I think Lisa mentioned earlier, to coaching mentorships and our EduCoach network overall that provides a space for coaches to come together, learn, share, and really just lean on one another to feel like there's somebody out there that understands what I'm doing and can help me with anything that might arise. We also
Yes.
have Coaches Camp, which is an amazing experience. When I went to Coaches Camp, it was such a solidifying experience from from the classroom and going into a different role. It really connected some dots for me. We usually have those, Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, those are usually through the summer, right?
Yes. Yes. So this year's going to be the hashtag FECamp24 is my understanding. Woo woo! But yeah, it's a great way to get person, in person with other coaches and learn and collaborate and just really up your game. It's amazing.
It really is. And it's a great way to just form that network. I ended up sitting next to someone that was from my home area and I knew because of their last name. And I was like, are you so and so? And she was like, well, yeah. So you
That's
never
funny. I
know who
was
you're
not
going to
aware of
come
that.
across.
That's great.
Isn't it funny? So you never know what's going to happen. And I'm glad that I have her in, my address book or my phone, if you want to say it that way nowadays. It's good to make those connections.
Love it.
And of course, if you just can't get enough of our webinars, we have one every third Thursday of the month at 3 p.m. Next month is the role of assessment in modern education. So don't forget to register at forward-edge.net/webinars. And I'm looking at the chat. We have a couple of little comments. Jamie wants to tell you she loves how you applied PBL to all grade levels and subjects. And she also loved Coaches Camp.
Awesome.
So we've had some positive feedback throughout this whole thing. And again, you just really tackled a big idea and brought it down to a level for quick bites and quick strategies to take back tomorrow. So thank you, Lisa.
Good.
And again,
you're welcome.
Thank you for doing this with me, Lisa. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Don't forget to register for next month, and we will see you back here, same time, same place. Thanks, everybody.